Let me start by thanking the Bank of Thailand for organizing this event and for giving the platform to discuss this important topic and sharing international experiences. This is, let's say for us also a starting point of a journey, because we have the annual meetings coming up next year, October, in Bangkok. It will be a very interesting event. And we can also and will use that as a platform to discuss safe and inclusive digital finance. It's a topic that is relevant across the world, and of course in your region there's a lot of experience. And we now have the esteemed panelists here who are also from the region and can share their experiences. So I'm really looking forward to this panel and the discussion and hearing the different perspectives. So in this panel, we would explore, what is, first of all, we will start a bit with what is the landscape in the different countries, because every country has its own perspective, its own specificities, and its own legal framework and ways to go about things. But we will also try to find out what are the commonalities, what are the lessons learned, what works, what doesn't work, and what does this mean for setting up a framework that is effective in digital fraud intervention? So with that, I would like to slowly move to the first question, where I think we would like to explore, what is the digital fraud landscape in the different countries, and what are the kind of measures that have been put in place to address these issues. So let me start with Nancy. So could you give an overview of Hong Kong and the experiences and the work you have been doing there?
Yeah, thank you, Dirk. This is Nancy from the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. I am very pleased to be here to share with you the latest fraud landscape of Hong Kong. Recent years, we have been seeing a rising trend of digital fraud. Similar to other international financial centers, digital fraud has been a serious problem in Hong Kong. I think the problem is especially serious after the COVID-19, because the COVID-19 actually changed significantly the customers' economic and also financial behavior, leading to a rise in online commerce and also financial services. In Hong Kong, as of today, more than half of our bank accounts were opened remotely. The second one, we actually see a rapid development of the faster payment system infrastructure within the region. In Hong Kong, in a city with a population of just 7.5 million people, we have got more than 17 million registration in our faster payment system as of today. So you can see recent years, the faster payment system infrastructure is actually going a lot. Last but not least, the technology development actually provide opportunity for fraudsters to exploit our financial system. They are using some technology like deepfake technology to deceive our victims. It has been a very serious problem. As I mentioned, the problem of digital fraud is very serious in Hong Kong. Like last year, 45,000 deception cases were reported in Hong Kong, and this resulted to US $1.2 billion deception losses. It's a huge amount. Not just talking about the financial losses, but it also causes a lot of psychological issues and also family issues. In the extreme case, it also impacts our customers' confidence in our financial system. In view of this one, Hong Kong actually established a very comprehensive and effective ecosystem approach by adopting a three pillars approach. The first one, we try to enhance our information flow as well as the collaboration side. That's the first pillar. The second one, we actually strengthen our detection, intervention, and also the recovery capability of our banks and also other financial services as well. Last but not least, we actually raise our customer alerts and also awareness. I am happy to share more about the anti-fraud initiative of Hong Kong later with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, this is one of the points, and it also came up earlier, right, with the rise of technology and the new methods. The scams are increasing, and in a way, it's like cyber risk, right? It's a kind of arms race. So on the one hand, you try to protect yourself, and the other side is also trying to increase its capacity to exploit and use the new technologies to interfere. So that's a challenge, yeah. So, Wenhua, can you give an example, or can you explain your situation in Singapore, the landscape and what you have put in place?
Yeah, happy to share that. Thank you for devoting time and inviting me to this session. The scourge of scams is a serious issue for regulators. So in Singapore, it's the same. The situation of scam in Singapore is still quite serious. In the first half of 2025, victims suffered losses about 456 million. It's slightly lower compared to 2024, but it's still a very serious concern in Singapore. The majority of these scams, like what my fellow colleagues from other countries have experienced, they are mostly self-effected transfers, meaning that the victims knowingly authorize these transfers to the scammers under social engineering or deceit. So why are these scams so successful? So I think part of the problem is because today scammers are becoming more sophisticated. They use deepfake, they use AI. But very fundamentally, they prey on human emotion, desire for companionship, respect for authority, or greed. So in the first half of 2025, we observed two key trends in Singapore. The first is the scam typology. The most serious and concerning scam typology in Singapore for the first half of 2025 is government officials impersonation scams, or GOIS for short. The number of cases in the first half of 2025 has risen almost 200%. Victims suffered losses for about 126 million. These kind of scams will undermine public's confidence in government officials and the authority. The next trend is how scammers move the funds. So increasingly, we see that scammers are actually using cryptocurrency platforms to move the funds. So beyond traditional banking methods or to transfer the funds, they are exploiting the anonymity features in cryptocurrency transactions to evade their trails. So in terms of, I want to talk a bit about victims' profile because I think that was also raised earlier. So for victims' profile in Singapore, there's one key point that I want to make. No one is immune from scams. From our data, all demographics are affected by scams. But what is different is that certain demographics are more susceptible to certain types of scams. So our data shows that the elderly, they are more susceptible to GOIS. For the young, they are more susceptible to job, investment, and e-commerce scams. So how do we tackle this? So in Singapore, I think we are similar to Hong Kong. We adopt an ecosystem approach. MES works with our lead agency for tackling scams, our Ministry of Home Affairs. We introduce intervention points across the scam queue chain, from the approach method, for example, through online or messaging platforms, to how the funds are being moved around from banks, and then lastly, through our recovery, freezing, tracing of funds. So we support this ecosystem effort by introducing our measures across 4 pillars: prevention, detection, enforcement, recovery, and underpinned by public education. So back to the two scam types, just a few examples of what we are doing to tackle these scams. So for the GOIS, MES works with police to issue press releases, numerous press releases, multiple press releases actually, to warn the public about the scam variant, how are they cheating our residents. Next, we also work through with banks to drum up the public messaging. So we make 2 very key points, important points repeatedly. So 1, government officials will never ask for your bank login details or your account details. 2, government officials will never ask you to transfer money. So we keep on drumming these messages throughout. So government ads, bank ads, so these messages are carried in banners. So next on the cryptocurrency transactions as a conduit. So we are working with our major cryptocurrency players to come up with a set of baseline measures to address this specific risk that they are being used as a conduit for scammers to launder their funds, scam proceeds. Yeah, that's all for my sharing. Thank you.
No, thank you. And just out of curiosity, and also Nancy, maybe for you both, the question, because now you have the framework in place, and of course it's continuously evolving, right? Because you need to respond to the developments. But if you look back in time, so when did this really became, because of course consumer protection has been around for a long period, right? But when did the digital fraud really came too high on the agenda, right? So is this something that has developed gradually over a long period? Is it really that it's over the last few years that it has been exploding? So what has been the development in that regard in your countries?
Actually, in Hong Kong, consumer protection is always one of the key elements in Hong Kong. But in terms of digital fraud, it is actually something that developing really quickly in the recent few years. Especially is something that I think the COVID-19 is really a triggering point as well, because it leads to a significant rise in people's demands on the online commerce and also the financial services. Just to share some of the statistics with you guys, in Hong Kong, actually half of our deception cases are actually related to the online commerce as well as the telephone deception. Similar to Singapore, one of the key scam tactics is also the impersonation of the government officials and also the customer service representative. I think it's also because of the significant rise in commerce activities. So people just try to pretend to be those representatives and deceive our people. So we step a lot in terms of the consumer protection, working very closely with our industry to form a task force on that. Thank you.
So just to add to Nancy's point, I agree with her that actually COVID-19 is a turning point. Because in Singapore as well, people don't go out. We encourage them to do non-face-to-face transactions. So that's where digital payments actually really ramped up quite significantly over the last few years. So for Singapore, I think the turning point starts when we had a quite major phishing scam case that happened to one of our local banks. Scammers were able to exploit the SMS channel. So messages were being sent under that local bank's SMS sender ID, and people were deceived into making quite a lot of, giving their account credentials away, and scammers were able to make quite a number of unauthorized transactions from their accounts. So from that on, I think our battle started before that, but I think that was really a key turning point for Singapore, and we started to focus a lot more on putting in our efforts across interagency and to come together to fight as an ecosystem to combat scams.
Maybe I can supplement a little bit from MAS. Actually, Wenhua just mentioned about the 2018 and 19 incidents. In fact, after hearing something very serious happened in Singapore, Hong Kong immediately responds by stepping up our e-banking security measures as well, because we can imagine that it can actually affect our people significantly if they are being deceived by those malware scam or those unauthorized transactions. So we see the importance to respond very quickly and raise the awareness of both the industry and the public as well. Thank you.
No, so COVID-19 has been a turning point in many ways, it seems. So Halimaton, so what is the landscape in Malaysia and what have been your responses?
Thank you, Dirk. I think since we are very close neighbor to Singapore, we share the same trend. unfortunately. Okay, but of course, we have seen a rising trend of reported online fraud in Malaysia, with total cases reported in first quarter 2025 recorded about 12,000 cases, an increase by 64%, with total loss of about 28 million ringgit Malaysia, an increase by 50%. But I just wanted to clarify that although it is an increase, but this data could suggest that people are getting more familiar with our reporting, with our fraud hotline number, that is 997. Hence, we are receiving more calls from the victims. And again, similar to Singapore, 95% of our online fraud are authorized transactions. And the common ones are, again, similar to Singapore: impersonation scam, e-commerce scam, loan and investment scam. And the balance are unauthorized transactions such as phishing and malware scam. And since the authorized transaction is very dominant in Malaysia, and the problem is that the pattern is closely resembles genuine transaction. So when we design our countermeasure, we have to really be mindful so that it won't affect the genuine transaction and our overall, the smooth functioning of our payment ecosystem. When it comes to approach undertaken by Malaysia, I think this is where we share similar commonalities with Hong Kong and Singapore, where we adopt a multi-pronged approach to combat fraud. And this covers three key pillars. One is prevention, second is enforcement and recovery, and third is awareness and customer protection. So these three pillars will ensure that the interventions will cut across different stages of the fraud cycle. On the prevention front, our focus will be on strengthening the security controls of the financial players, including the e-money issuer, to stop fraud from happening in the first place. Some of the measures that we have introduced include strengthening the authentication process by migrating from SMS OTP to a more robust authentication process. And we also introduced cooling off period just to provide some buffer time for sender to think twice before they click the transaction. And also kill switch. On the enforcement front, we enhance our law to enable that we can take a more swift and punitive action on the fraudster. We also established the National Scam Response Center that comprise members from key agencies and financial institutions to facilitate a coordinated response in detecting and recovering fraud losses. The last pillar is awareness, which we think this is a very important pillar because it helps us to build a strong first line of defense. Through this awareness program, we ensure that victims are equipped with the necessary knowledge on how to detect and, importantly, to report scam, because fast reporting is crucial to enable law enforcement agency to quickly recover the losses. And what we have seen so far is that this implementation has given us a very positive outcome. Cases of phishing and malware reported to Bank Negara has reduced by 52% in 2024. And we have also seen the ability of our banking institution to block online scam at the onset before it even approach the victim, worth almost 400 million in value terms, which is about 5 times higher than the value of actual cases reported to Bank Negara. Yeah, I end there. Dirk?
Yeah. No, and this is, the data in that sense is challenging, like also when we saw this morning when talking about Thailand, right, where only a small percentage gets reported, and then if the reporting goes up, so then the other statistics is like, what does the fraud numbers do? So there may be, you know, it's important to try to distinguish, right, what is the trend. So also the data side is a challenge because it's difficult to really estimate what is not reported and what goes in. So but so what I also heard in the other panelists say, right, is that it's not. So when we think about digital fraud, and you all work for the central bank, so we think about it's a financial issue, it needs regulation and supervision, but it also can undermine the trust in public authorities in general, like the government, the governmental authorities. So are they involved in having a lead role, or what does it mean for the entire approach that also is affecting other authorities?
I think, again, this is where you can see from our National Scam Response Center, as I mentioned earlier, the setup is represented by key stakeholders, not only at Central Bank Negara Malaysia. We have our police force, our multimedia agency, as well as our Securities Commission. That representation, it's already a positive sign to show that it's a whole of nation approach. Yep, we are embarking, we are all together in combating fraud.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah. So how does this play out? We heard already a lot this morning, but how does this play out in the Bank of Thailand, Thailand, and what are your responses?
Okay, because I don't think I want to repeat what happened in session 1, but one thing that I want to focus on is the number. When we talk about the digital fraud, we normally distinguish it between like unauthorized fraud, right, and also authorized fraud. For unauthorized fraud, our country, like Thailand, I think we are somehow fortunate that the key digital payment that we are using is mobile banking application, which we've been talking for 2 days together, right? And I think other countries, they're using internet banking for quite a lot. For mobile banking app, it's quite easy to put in place control, like biometric authentication. So our unauthorized fraud case used to be quite high, like a quarter, 7,000 cases a quarter. Now it has been coming down to 0 case since like the beginning of this year. And that's because the key tool that we're using for digital payment is the mobile banking app. And we required the banks to put control on that app. And since that control is quite effective, the cases have been coming down to 0. But again, as for authorized fraud, we've been seeing the rise, and it peaked though last year, but it has come down for almost half for us. But the number is still quite high, like amounting 5 billion baht losses for a quarter. So that's still definitely too high for our country, considering we have limited emergency savings, we have limited retirement saving, and for those savings that they have to go up against these digital fraud cases. So I think that the way that the measures that we've been doing so far, I think is just the same as Singapore, Malaysia, and Hong Kong. The prevention, the detection, recovery, share responsibility, and awareness. One thing that I would like to focus on is, I think our legislation framework has been very good. The cyber law that was passed 2 years ago allow the banks and e-money to share information amongst each other, and we could trail the money for the victims. The one that has been passed this year, it really accentuate the fact that it's a whole eco that's coming to play together. I think we are one of the few countries who, with that legislation, it involved from telco, social media platform, banks, e-monies, and digital assets players, including digital assets platform. And it requires regulators to put in place enough standards for all these players to prevent, like for the telecom and the social media, to prevent the fraudsters to get hold of the victims. And even though it could get hold of the victims, the law requires Bank of Thailand and Security SEC to put in place standards to ensure that the money loss is limited. And for those that's been lost, it could be recovered with the shared responsibility guideline. So I think the legislation that we have, it's actually one of the few that's having right now. And it's really enhancing the incentive system for both the regulators and the operators to step up their game. And we could see, really huge difference in protecting the customers from the beginning of this year. So it's been very interesting. And also our data sharing is not only within the banks now. So it's when you follow the money trails, it not only go within the banking system, it goes from banks and then to e-money and then come back to the banks and then to the digital assets. So now we could connect all the dots with the data. And once we have all the data, we could spot the moves, and then we could have the move management system that's really effective. So I think the data system for us, the data sharing system for us is quite good as well. And also the sharing of responsibility that's driving out the game. Thank you.
So one thought that comes to mind, right? So I also work a lot on cybersecurity, and of course, if you have malicious actors, they operate cross-border. Of course, a bank in the United States, if you take JP Morgan, it has a huge amount of assets. But then again, it also has the best cybersecurity, right? Because they have the money, the resources, and people want to work there. So you can have much smaller banks in developing and emerging markets with, in terms of money, it may be less, but they may have less cybersecurity. So they are more interesting target, right, for malicious actors. So in parallel to that, like also when we talk about digital fraud, I would say, these are also international actors. It's a cross-border risk, right? So they can be anywhere operating. So what does this mean, right? So if Thailand is improving its protection and it's becoming more difficult, then they will see, okay, which country in the region is less advanced. So is that something you are worried about or you are seeing, or how do you view this perspective?
I think it's important to not only for our country to not be the last gazelle. I think we as a region should help each other to not become the last gazelle. And maybe our experience, we were talking that, our experience that since we've been top hit to this over the past few years, we could be good lesson learned for other countries who are experiencing this as well. So we're looking forward to the paper next year. Right? Yeah.
I just wanted to add on to Poon's remark. I think when we talk about weakest link, right, we don't have to go far to international level. It even applies to domestic. So again, if we enhance our security controls on a banking institution, what about e-money? We know fraudster will always find the weakest link, the point of vulnerabilities. So essentially, whatever we are doing, we have to make sure everyone are equipped, everyone is ready to fight with this fraudster. Yeah, so bring it up to the international level. Same concept should apply.
No, the weakest link is an important thing to keep in mind, absolutely. Yeah, that's pretty clear. So when we think about the effectiveness, right? So what works, what doesn't work, what are lessons learned? So I think on the one hand, of course, there's always a lot of interest in sharing the good practices and what is effective. But for many authorities, it would also be interesting to learn a bit on what is challenging. We tried this, but it didn't work well. Maybe we can also have a look at those both perspectives and to discuss that. So let me start now with Halimaton. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dirk. I think there is the truth to the saying that if you want to beat the scammer, you have to think just like them. Yeah. Because, online scammers, they operate in a syndicate, highly organized syndicate, and they use advanced technology, right? So likewise, we have to be ready to use advanced technology to compete with them. Not only to keep up with them, but to stay ahead of them so that we can always protect our citizen at all costs. And in Malaysia, we use technology across our three pillars, the prevention, the enforcement, as well as awareness. For instance, in the prevention space, we use technology to enhance the payment authentication, where just now I mentioned that we have migrated from SMS OTP to a more secure app-based authentication. And when we did this, what we noticed is that it does not only bolster the security feature of our online application, but also it enhances the user's experience through seamless authentication process within the mobile app. Yeah? And another example would be the implementation of kill switch, where technology allows us to empower user to stop suspicious transaction quickly without waiting for the bank, without the need to wait for the banking institution or authorities to take action. We also use technology as a key enabler in our enforcement, especially in empowering our national fraud portal. By using advanced technology, we can swiftly trace stolen funds and at the same time uncover the scam network. Through NFP, we are able to reduce time taken to trace stolen funds by 75%, bringing down the average tracing time with complete information to just 30 minutes. And we can also see 47% increase in monthly earmark amounts, reaching about 3.8 million a month. And we are able to detect a large number of mule accounts, an increase by 65%, with over 6,000 mule accounts identified through NFP. So there is a potential, there is a vast potential for us to harness on the power of technology to enhance our fraud response and moving away from response-driven to a proactive defense system. Yeah. Thanks, Dirk.
Oh, great. So technology is, right. So this is the arms race. It is used against you, and you have to use it also to make sure you protect yourself. Yeah. So what does this for Singapore? What can you share in terms of what works and what are lessons learned of things to avoid?
So for Singapore, I think I just want to make one key point in terms of what works and not. I think we must be able to recognize that when we roll out anti-scam measures, it may not always work as intended. So I think we must be able to adapt and tweak the measure along the way. So I'll bring two examples. So one is our money lock. Money lock means that a bank customer is able to lock its funds away such that it cannot be digitally transferred unless the person presents himself at the bank branch or through an ATM. So money lock today, it's well adopted. Over 370,000 customers have set aside about 30 billion Singapore dollars in money lock. So it is now today a voluntary and opt-in approach. So when it first rolled out, there were two methods that were offered. So one, it was to set aside a separate account. It was offered by some banks. And another method was actually within the same savings account, you earmark a portion of the savings that cannot be transferred. So what actually turns out that the more popular measure was the earmarking method and not the separate account method. One reason was that the separate account actually didn't offer the interest rate that was as high as the savings account. So that was one lesson that was learned along the way. And then these banks, they may pivot out to the earmarking method, which was more popular. The second example I would bring is transaction alerts and messages that are being sent to customers. So today in Singapore, banks are required to send post-transaction notification alerts to their customers. So these transactions alerts, they are typically standard messages that tells you a specific amount, you have transferred this amount to a specific party. So what didn't work was that these kind of messages, they are easily missed by customers. And it also is not very effective in the authorized kind of transaction scenario or self-effected transfers that we mentioned. So what banks are now studying is to actually introduce pre-transaction warning messages. So these messages should be tailored and customized to the type of the activity or high-risk activity that the customer is intending to do. So what it can help is that it helps to break a customer's mind from a hot state to a cold state. Basically, it's like pouring a bucket of water over your head. So in the GOIS example that's stated earlier, so there are these kind of purposefully structured messages that are being sent. Are you sure you are going to send to this person? Government officials will never ask you to transfer money. Are you sure this is the party that what you want to transfer? You raise your limit. Are you sure you want to raise the limit so high? So the messages should be tailored and structured to the type of the activity that the customer is intending to do. So we believe in self-helping the customers and public as well. So there are some banks have already piloted these, and there are some early encouraging signs that the kind of authorized transactions that are happening has come down a bit when people receive these kind of messages to remind them not to do certain things. Yeah. And just one last thing I wanted to mention is in terms of the enabling factor, a success factor. I think a discerning and vigilant public is very important. It's essential, actually. So we really need to continuously equip and educate the public through our different channels. I think we can certainly do better in terms of which channel to use to target different types of demographic for certain types of scams that we mentioned earlier. So for the elderly, for example, if you do social media channel, if they are not very media savvy, that will not be the most appropriate channel to reach out to them. You could do so via, radio stations where they tune into. So certain anti-scam messages should be done through that. And we are doing that through our GOS messages. So that's one example. So all in all, public education is important. We need to make sure that our public and citizens, they are well equipped to have the awareness and the ability to recognize and stop scams and share the scams around. Thank you.
No, and also I like the sharing of this kind of experiences because it's extremely important. Like there's no international standard, right, on the framework to address digital fraud and the way we have the developments now. So authorities are advancing, doing their best to do whatever is necessary to protect the public and the financial system and the companies. But it's also, we need to learn, right, what is happening, and it should be a joint effort of society, but also across jurisdictions. There's a lot to learn from each other and in moving forward. So for Thailand, could you share some experiences?
Definitely. I think one thing that make it difficult and challenging to handle or to manage the digital fraud problems is the fact that fraudsters and Mu, they're very dynamic. They have very good R&D and have very good training center. We were talking with the police over the past years, and the police saying, the punishment of not reaching KPI is not there anymore. So if I work whole day as a fraudster, right, call center agents, from 9 to maybe 6, and if I do not reach my KPI, they would only give me 3 more hours of training before going to bed and after waking up. So it's really tough training center to make sure that I could reach the KPI that I should be getting from the victims. So how, and they have really good R&D and data, all those data leak that happened to us, it's their source of information to make sure that they could do the social engineering, successfully. So what we've been experiencing so far is how to manage the Mu dynamically. At first, we used to have the Mu and they would sell their accounts, right, deposit accounts. So we introduced face scan for for the authentication before they could transfer the money. And now we have the mule that would be staying with the fraudsters for like 2 or 3 days so that they could do the face scan as well. So it's the fact that they are very dynamic and us have to be equally or more dynamic as Binay mentioned before. We have to be more dynamic to make sure that we could not only prevent the new trends, but also the not only to catch, but also to prevent the new trends. Yeah. Another thing is, I think because everything is so dynamic and we require all operators to be very dynamic about it. I think it's an incentive system that make sure that all operators are up their game all the times. It's not that, okay, this year everything is in the news, so they'll be on top of it, and then next year it's not in the news anymore, so they, lower their guards. I think that's not what we want. So the legislation, the role and responsibilities, the shared responsibility framework is very crucial to make sure that that incentive for the whole ecosystem is there and there all the time.
So if I can ask Oramone, what is the main challenge of getting the shared responsibility in place? So how do you raise that?
I think for Thailand, the government passed the law, and because the first law that was launched 2 years ago, it only involved banks and e-money players, and we now know that there are other operators that are very key in preventing the victims from having the financial loss, which is like the telco and also the social media platform and also the digital assets players. The government and together with other agencies as well, including us, the banks, telecommunication regulators, SEC, we help draft the new law to make sure that we have the role in it and we have the role in enhancing the practice of our operators. I think so that law is very crucial for me.
Thanks.
Sorry, I just wanted to circle back to Wenhua's point on building a vigilant society. I think this is a critical issue that Malaysia is facing where, just now I mentioned that our fraud type are mostly authorized transaction and cognitive behavior underpins authorized transaction. And this becomes a key challenge to Malaysia because Malaysian in general, our cyber hygiene, it's a bit, yeah. I'm not going to rate either good or poor, but okay, it requires some improvement, definitely. So based on Malaysia's financial capability and inclusion demand survey, 15% of Malaysians share their banking credential to close friends. 60%, that's a very high number, pay little attention to security features of banking website. Yeah. So while these figures have improved over time, over the years, it still highlights a very persistent gap in customer vigilance. Yeah, and this is despite that we continuously step up our consumer education, consumer awareness program across various channels, and in fact, we also embed fun, interactive, relatable content to make sure that these messages sticks to the customer. But still, we fail. Yeah, and I just wanted to highlight that probably this is where we need to rethink about our customer education approach, our customer awareness approach, and probably the conventional advisory messages, don't click, don't download, it's definitely not enough. Yeah, we have to send a very hard-hitting messages that really hits hard to them, such as if you wrongly click, you can go bankrupt. Or it could lead to suicide, broken homes, some serious messages that probably will make Malaysia think that, okay, I better not do that, right? So probably, we will continue to explore what kind of messages that we should be sending. And of course, we have to also bear in mind the cultural perspective because Malaysian generally, we don't use that kind of languages, yeah? But again, this is something that we have to be creative. and probably act based on what really need to be done. Yep.
Maybe if I could jump in on this, we've been thinking about the messages as well. For behavioral science perspective, if you keep the first time always shocking, right? But if you see that message, every day and every transaction that you make, and they just ignore it. We were trying to use, in red, in bold, but when it comes up so often, they just being ignored. We actually writing a new regulation, asking the banks to step up their games on the awareness test and use the behavioral science perspective on it, and make sure that the new they have to test all the time that the thing that they are trying to do, the cognitive break, is it really working still, or is it have to develop a new techniques? Have to be ongoing. Very tough.
Yeah, I also want to supplement on the message side as well, because in Hong Kong, we also see the problem of fishing fraud is a very serious issues. That's why actually our big boss actually joined hand with a singer to introduce a song called Kick Your Links Fall for Scams, and then they sing a song to the general public to remind the importance of actually if you fall for kick the links, the issues can be actually very serious. And also in this year, for the HKMA, we also introduced a banana as our mosque to represent the serious consequence of kicking the links. That is, in the appearance itself, it looks very lovely, very cute banana. But after you kick it, it actually comes with a forster. We actually introduced such kind of innovative means to so that attract the attention of the public. Besides that, our banking industry also collaborate a lot with us in terms of the publicity effort as well. Some of the big, large retail banks actually host some musical concert, or some use the theme called dim sum, because in Chinese we love eating dim sum. Because we saw that a lot of victims are actually elderly. So our banks actually use some innovative ideas to use dim sum to attract the attention of elderly. Yeah, and another group of vulnerable customer is students. That's why our banks usually actually edit some of the famous songs and work together with our singers to edit the songs to make this in the heart of the general public.
So now I'm almost thinking that we should have practiced the song to finish the panel discussion at the end, but we did not do that. But and one question that comes to my mind also when thinking about this entire society approach, like in Thailand we heard is moving to the social platforms. But one thing, you're right. So when we think about the big tech, when it comes to cloud, when it comes to the big social media platforms, they are generally enterprises that seem to be built to avoid regulation and supervision, and so they are difficult to grapple with, right? As an authority. This reminds me, like there was a few weeks ago or a month ago, there was this article in the Financial Times by Martin Wolf. He's one of the authors in the Financial Times, and he said, there are so many scams on Facebook where I advertise a certain investment, and it should not be that difficult for Facebook because I don't do that, right? I don't do that by definition because of my job. I cannot do that. So for a social like a big tech, it should not be difficult to detect that and to remove it, but they don't, right? So how does this work in Hong Kong? So how are you able to deal with social media and platforms, because some of them are also international, and they may be difficult to deal with.
Yeah, we also acknowledge the potential issue that social media platforms are actually being abused by the criminal to advertise some fake advertisement. That's why in July this year, we actually worked together with the social media platform and also other sectors as well, both like the travel agency, some retail sector as well, to form an anti-scam protection charter. Under this charter, we actually work very closely with the social media platforms. After banks, for example, they found that their names are being used by fraudsters, they will immediately share their names to the social media platform, work closely with Meta, etc., to take down those fake news. Because what we found is last year, some travel agency actually encountered this problem quite seriously because Hong Kong people just like traveling a lot. So when they see some very cheap travel package in Facebook, they just try to click the link itself. And then the fraudster actually deceived the victims to download into a malware as well. So we see the importance of working very closely, not just on the banking sector, but also other industries such as social media platform, the retail sector as well.
Well, thank you. Anyone else who would like to share experience with the social media platforms?
Yeah, I think for Thailand, because of the legislation covers social platforms as well. So social platform regulators in Thailand, they wrote the share responsibility regulation, and that said that if the regulators require the social media platform to take down certain page or certain website, they would be required to do so, legally required. And if they do not do so, they would have to share responsibility with the victims. So that's already in place right now. Yeah.
So maybe I'll just add a point to what Nancy has shared on the collaboration with Meta. So I think recently, in the recent few weeks ago, I think we use our legislative level, Online Criminals Harm Act, and we issued a directive to Meta because I mentioned GOIS is the top most concerning scam type in Singapore. So we actually issued a directive to Meta such that they are required to take down the impersonation of our political office holders in Singapore. So these are the kind of measures that we have worked in place. We will continue to work with Meta for other kinds of to step up our cooperation with Meta and other online platforms to combat scams.
Yeah. So this goes back to the entire society approach where everyone needs to be on board, right? It's extremely important. So maybe we go to the last item of the agenda for this panel. So there are what can we synthesize, right? What are lessons learned when we think about the key policy priorities, balancing safety with convenience, getting all stakeholders to share responsibility, but also on enhancing consumer awareness and how they can protect themselves. So let me start with Nancy, and so could you share what are the key policy priorities also when you would think about other authorities in other jurisdictions, right, that would start to work on it? What would be the starting point, and what would be how would you organize that framework?
When we organize the framework, I think the key thing is we need to understand the unique features of the digital fraud itself first. Although there is no universal definition of digital fraud itself, I would think that for digital fraud, the general understanding is that it is conducted through digital means. And also in terms of its characteristics, is rapid fund movement, and also is cross-jurisdictional. I think when we drive our policy objective, We just need to introduce some key principle or key considerations to address the characteristics of digital fraud. That's why I shared earlier when we introduced our framework to address the digital fraud issues in Hong Kong, we adopt the ecosystem approach, working on the 3 pillars approach. Maybe I can share a bit more on our policy priority on those 3 pillars. For the first one on the information sharing and collaboration side, as I just mentioned, digital fraud is characterized by its rapid fund movement. So we actually see it's very important to enhance the information flow amongst the stakeholders. Back to June 2023, Hong Kong introduced our bank-to-bank information sharing platform called Finance. When it was first introduced, it only covered fraud-related information of corporate only. It is due to some legal concern by our banks that they are worried that they will be being sued by their customers to share the customer data, etc. That's why we actually amend our legislations to enable this, and this has been done. We are so excited about that. By the end of this year, we actually expanded our bank-to-bank information that allow our banks to share some personal account information as well, if they found that those personal or individuals are actually involved in fraud-related matters. That's our first priority. The second priority is on strengthening our bank's capability, our bank's detection and intervention capability. As I just mentioned, digital fraud is characterized by its rapid fund movement. So we also need to be very dynamic. I like the word used by Thailand. Dynamic is very important, because we just need to move very fast and respond very fast to the latest MO. So back to December last year, we actually see a significant increase in terms of authorized payment scam. That's why we introduced a comprehensive framework to tackle the authorized payment scam issues. We actually see some successful story there. After we introduced the dynamic APS monitoring system and also enhance the customer alert and also introduce risk mitigating measures, what we found is the detection rate of our banks increased by more than 2-fold. In terms of the customer losses from the deception cases, it drops by more than 30%. So we will continue to strengthen our bank's capability in early detection as well as early intervention as well. We will be working on thematic review to assess our bank's implementation of these measures, because we see the importance to provide feedback to our banks, and also we also work very closely with our industry to share with them some good practices guide as well. Last but not least is about the customer alert and awareness. In fact, Hong Kong MA work very closely with our partners, including the police and also the banking sector as well. And we actually form anti-fraud educational task force with our stakeholders. We introduce a publicity efforts for both the general public as well as some target segments, including the elderly, the students, etc. We hope that by building that comprehensive and effective ecosystem, we can altogether tackle the problem of digital fraud. Thank you.
No, thank you. I think, yeah, this is a nice summary of key priorities, right? Which of course, you need to take into account the local specificities. But I think also hearing the other three panelists in their responses earlier, there are a lot of similarities, right, in the approach. So there seems to be a lot of commonality in the thinking and the lessons learned, and probably there has been some data sharing and experience sharing in the region. So that's very important and key to continue. So Wenhua, so when you think about the balancing and the trade-off between convenience and safety, right? On the one hand, we hear a lot like, digitalization is great because you don't need to go to the bank anymore. You can do everything online. It goes fast payments and instant payments, great. But sometimes frictions also play an important role. So how do you look at that in Singapore, and how do you strike this balance? How is that taken into account?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the right balance between security and convenience will differ from country to country. I think each country have to speak for themselves in terms of to strike the right balance between convenience and security. This is also taking into account that each country, their demographics, profiles of the citizens, the usage of payments, and the types of payment methods differs across the countries. So what is right for Singapore may not be right for Malaysia, may not be right for Thailand, or may not be right for Hong Kong. So I think we need to take that first point into account. As for Singapore, I think collectively as a society, we are increasingly leaning towards security over convenience. So we have said that publicly also quite a few times that we, as a society, we need to pivot. We cannot be always just convenience for the sake of convenience. We need to take into account security, which is a very important part as well. So public have come to the kind of getting used to instant payments, as what we have mentioned, the phenomenon of the past few years because of COVID. They are used to this instant, fast payments and the convenience that has brought to us today. So public education, very important. We keep on drumming the message to the public at every opportunity that we have that you must expect friction going forward in your payments. And these are actually intended to keep you safe, to keep the system safer. So we need to keep on drumming that message out to the public. They may not like it at the start. They feel that I'm just making a legitimate transaction to this person. Why am I getting a delay in this? So I think we need to continuously shape the public narrative so that over time, people will get used to the inconveniences and come to realize that actually these friction and delays in your payments, whether is it financial or non-financial meaning that you're doing a high-risk activity, for example, raising a limit, it's not a financial transaction, but it's a high-risk activity. So these kind of activities, both financial and non-financial, they can expect delays, and they accept it as part of using digital payments. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to supplement a little bit. Hong Kong also shares similar view as Singapore as well. We think that it's actually not ideal or actually impossible to move to the extreme. That is, you try to maximize your digitalization, but you are taking a very significant level of digital risk. So what we are doing is really how to balance between the safety and also convenience to our customer. And our job is to make sure when we introduce some digitalization initiative, we need to have a proper safeguards there. And we, in Hong Kong, one of the key policy objectives we are doing is how we can actually, for a given level of digital fraud risk, how we can actually maximize our benefit from the digitalization. Or with the same level of digitalization, we are reducing our digital fraud risk. It's something that we are working towards against it. And we actually think that there are three key enablers to achieve this. For the first one is about technology. I think similar to everyone, technology is a very important one. That's why in September last year, Hong Kong HKMA actually issued a guidance to major banks in Hong Kong with significant operation, required them to consider how they can actually deploy artificial intelligence in monitoring their suspicious activities. And we actually received a very positive feedback from them. So in the next 2 years, we are going to speed up the process by working together with a consultant to partner with our banks to enhance their usage of artificial intelligence to monitor the suspicious activity. That's the first one. The second one is we see it's very important on the data. Good data will enable our banks to manage their financial crime risk much better. That's why, as I just mentioned, we are expanding our bank-to-bank information sharing. Besides, we also work together with our banks on doing some data analytics project as well, because we actually believe that we can draw some important insight from the payment data as well. Last but not least, I think the key enabler is the collaboration. Of course, I believe everyone will agree that no single institutions can handle the issue of digital fraud. So we always continue to step up our public-private partnership, and also not just working on the financial sector itself, we also work closely with other sectors like social media platform, the retail sectors as well. I think the anti-scam protection charter is just our first step to work closely with the other sectors. We see a lot of opportunity to work closely with them. Thank you.
If I could jump in as well, I think the key thing going forward is, I think when we started with the digital fraud problems, it's more like reaction, right? We see the problem, we try to spot the move and see the money trail, and then we spot it and we solve it, we correct it. I think going forward, everyone's on the same page that we have to do more prevention, preventing the victims to being fooled into debt, or preventing the move to using the account. How to prevent it dynamically and with greater possibility and being more concise. So it's using the technology like the AI and using lots and lots of data like the emails and everything, or the network of the data. So totally agree that that's definitely the road to go. So we are talking with the banks and requiring the banks as well to explore the use of AI and the use of mass data, so that they could predict the risk of that account becoming the move, the risk of that account becoming the victims, to spot abnormalities of the transaction that the victim is using, so that we could prevent the problems instead of correcting or solving the problems. So we are seeing developments in that area. Some banks already have been using AI for quite a few times, quite a few period, and the result has been interesting. So it's a now ecosystem that's going that way. Also, to touch a bit on the data, we are seeing importance of using the interbank data, interbank payment flow data as well. In our case, 80% of the transactions with the money trails is actually with the of us or interbank data, and that's with the payment operators. And that would be very useful to be used to predict the problems.
So just what does this all mean, right? So this goes back to the shared responsibility and Halimaton. Could you talk to that in how do you deal with that in Malaysia? How do you get this done? And also out of curiosity, I would be interested to hear. And now I'm thinking of the experience we had with open finance and open banking, right? So when we were working on that, and also I know that when authorities start to implement it, there's a lot of pushback often from incumbents. right? Because there's a cost, because you need to have API, you need to share data. So it requires investment in infrastructure for the incumbents to share that data with potential competitors, right? So they may not be, at first, not be very open to do this. So here it is also a shared responsibility, but investing in AI, investing in protection, doing more on consumer education awareness. Also for the financial institutions, there's a cost to it, right? And also for the social media platforms, there's a cost to it. So how enthusiastic are they about all these efforts?
Very good question, and in fact, very difficult. But I fully agree with you. Typically, when we talk about shared responsibility, we are skewed towards compensation mechanism. But again, in Malaysia, when we talk about shared responsibility, it has to cover two aspects. The prevention, we start with the prevention, because again, as Nancy mentioned just now, combating fraud, it's not a one-man show. It requires the entire ecosystem to work together. And this will involve financial institution, telcos, the social media platform, and even the customer. They have their own responsibility to fight this threat. And when it comes to prevention, while generally we have seen greater collaboration among the financial institution and telcos, I think what I envy most of the other colleagues just now is that the collaboration with the social media platform, which of course they help us, but personally I don't think that's enough. Yeah, I think social media platform, they really need to back up and join forces with the regulator as well as the financial institution and telcos to really stop scam at the onset, because they are the key entry point, right? So prevention measures by the social media platform has to be strengthened. Then only we can seriously address this issue. That's my call to action to whoever is listening to this symposium. And when it comes to compensation, I think we have to be clear here. Who are we protecting? It's actually the customer. We have to make sure that whether or not our framework will provide protection to the customer. And to us, a good compensation framework must not focus on how many parties that you are able to bring into the ecosystem. Yeah? Because if that's the thinking, it could or it may merely lead to symbolic inclusion. Okay, I have you in, I have everyone in, but end of the day, customer would have to pay, would have to face the losses, right? So this is where, to us, the essence of shared responsibility has to be with element of joint capability, where losses are shared among the affected parties. So in Malaysia, what we did is that in June 2024, we issued policy enhancement to strengthen protection to victims of unauthorized transaction, where the focus was on making sure the investigation process is robust and transparent, and it applies the principle of joint responsibility, where the assessment will take into account of the weaknesses of the customer as well as the financial institution, and the allocation of the fraud losses will be defined based on the obligation of respective parties. So essentially, ours is slightly different, slightly different in the sense that there could be an instances where the investigation points that the customer has indeed clicked a link, but the bank fails to stop the transaction despite there is a strong indication to say that it is a suspicious transaction. The bank has to be jointly responsible to absorb the fraud losses together with the customer. Yeah, that's where we are heading to. I mean, in fact, that's the framework that we are currently having. I think, again, when we talk about shared responsibility, we must not forget about the prevention side. Yeah, and to us, that is a very critical point that I would like to borrow Wenhua's term, drum into the actors' head, that everyone has to be responsible in fighting this fraud. Yeah, thank you.
So this shared responsibility, right, which now has been implemented, was there a lot of resistance from the banking system?
Definitely, but that is where the regulator has to come in and set the right tone. This is the way that it should be. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
For Thailand, I think we are seeing something a bit different as well. I think the banks community, I think they see benefits of customers using digital payments, with the digital footprint that's seen. They could use that information for loan underwriting, and that's business for the banking with, well-considered credit risk management. So I think they actually prefer for the customers to be more and more on digital payments, as well as they could sell payment for the shop retails as well, payment facilities for the shop retailers. So that business prospects kind of help them to be on our side as well. The bank actually mentioned to us that, this is unlike other consumer protection areas. This is the areas that them and us are actually on the same goals. So it's been quite different for Thailand on this regards.
So when thinking about this, right? So if I suppose I was a commercial bank, and I would be doing pretty well, right, in the prevention and detection and avoiding that my customers are exposed to fraud, and I would have an advertisement, right? And I would say, why don't you bank with me because I'm the safest bank in country XYZ, right? Are banks thinking this way, or other financial institutions thinking this way, that they are promoting or positioning themselves, taking the benefit of being at the forefront? Is that also a motivator? Well, am I now giving the banks an idea?
We have yet to see that trend, but I think, again, personally, I don't see any harm in that, because in fact, it's about protecting the customer, right? Yeah. So they should be moving towards that way, and that competition would encourage them to beef up, to strengthen their defenses against fraud. And essentially, when we talk about banking business, it's about business of trust, right? So yeah, let them do it.
Yeah. So, and on maybe as on the consumer protection and awareness, Oramone. So, what is key here? Because it sounds like also and the implications of fraud can be significant, right? We heard already examples up to suicide, and it can be. It's not only talking about the financial loss. We're talking about something that has significant personal implications in many different ways that can come, right? So the protection is very important. The awareness is very important. So how to go about that?
I think the way that we've been doing so far is trying every way that we can. We are doing like social media boosts with the Bank of Thailand social pages and connecting with the influencers, and that's one part. We are also pushing with the financial literacy education at the school system, and the financial digital literacy is one of the key areas that we are teaching them. In the school books, in the syllabus, in the tests. That's what we are pushing right now as well, and also training the teachers to make sure that they are aware of this and they could teach the students when they become the real teachers. I think we have been doing that, but one thing that we see is, the first thing is quite limited reach. The first, through the social media. The second, through the education, like the compulsory education, it takes times, right? So we are now legally require the banks to do the financial literacy on the digital frauds. So they have to do it like on their pages, on their SMS, on their anything that they could connect to the customers, because their reach is all the customers in Thailand, right? So that's the best reach that we could get. So we are putting it in the regulation, and it's not just the reach that's not working. We are asking them, as mentioned before, we're asking them to test, if that attempt still valid and still working, to raise the awareness, to break the cognitive. Yeah. So we are going that way with that new regulation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in Hong Kong, we are similar to Thailand. We try every ways to raise customer awareness. Of course, we will do through our social media platform, because we have actually got a Facebook for the HKMA, the WeChat posts, etc. We got the social media posts. We also work together with some district person as well. Because we actually see that, because in Hong Kong, although Hong Kong is a very small place with a population of just 7.5 million, but we got a very high population density. So we actually we see very importance to engage the district councillor. And because they are the one to maintain very close collaboration or close communication with our general public. So we actually established some instant communication groups with those district councillor. We also established some instant communication groups with our banks. By doing so, the objective is really to share the latest scam tactics to this group of people for their further disseminations to the general public. Because I think, as all of you know, digital fraud, the fraudster evolves just so quickly. So we need to be even quicker as well. Yeah. So, thank you.
So, we are moving towards the end of the panel, but there came 2 questions in from the audience. So let me give them to you in one go, and then I will open the floor to you who would like to briefly respond. So the first one is how do regulators balance personal data of positive and negative fraud, right? So I think this goes back to the mule account cases. And the other one, Hong Kong was mentioning, but also the others are doing is where integrating and sharing data across governmental agencies. So do we need a new middleman? The question makes me kind of think about open finance. So open finance, for example, in India, where you have different entities that are in between that organize the data and share it. Is that something we would be seeing or will be seeing? Maybe it's not. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. So those are the two questions for you. How do you look at this?
Can I try the second one? Just that because with the new legislation that was passed earlier this year, before the data sharing was amongst the banking sector or the financial system, among the banking sector, only the banks and also e-money, and then we involve other financial system as well, which is the digital assets. The new legislation allow for the middleman, which is the fraud, central fraud call center operator, and they could do like data sharing within the same sector. Like the telco, they have one information sharing. The financial system have one information sharing, and the social platform media have one. And these different platforms, they could share across as well through the middleman. And that is already in the legislation that was passed this year. So we actually have high hope for it. So when you spot the move from the financial sector, if you cross it with the telephone number that they use, or the email that they use, then we would be in a even better position to catch the mole and the whole of the system. Yeah.
That is more a matter of how do you organize it in a way that is most effective, right?
Yeah.
So, anyone else to these two questions?
I think, we also acknowledge the importance of data security and also data privacy as well. So when we roll out those ideas or initiative on the information sharing, we always start small first because we are also worried about the bad consequence of data leakage or even another issue on financial exclusion as well. Because we are also worried that, for example, some of the innocent people are being mislabeled in those data information sharing platform, which leads to their difficulty in getting a bank account or even their account are being closed. So one of the key concept applied in Hong Kong is for this kind of initiative, we always start small first. And then we will see we see the importance of the participation from the financial regulators as well as the law enforcement agency. Because, of course, we need to make sure, for example, we got a safeguard there from a policy level. For example, in Hong Kong, to support our bank-to-bank information sharing platform, the HKMA actually issue a guidance to our banks on what they can be shared, how they can use the data there, and to make sure they got a proper control there to safeguard their data. Yeah, that's the key thing. And also, the law enforcement agencies' participation can help with the cyber security or the security system itself. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, so there's a lot to process here. And we also came to the end of time of the panel, but I even saw that Halimaton was still wondering, but I think there's lunch. So for anyone who has remaining questions, I think you have still time to talk to the panelists after this panel. So Oramone, Halimaton, Wenhua, and Nancy, thanks a lot for sharing these experiences. I think this is very important for countries to do. And a story and a journey to be continued. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for our distinguished panelists for sharing your valuable insight and for our moderator who guiding the discussion so effectively. Thank you very much. We truly appreciate your time and your contributions today. Thank you. Please join me to give a big hand of them again. ค่ะและเพื่อให้ทุกท่านนะคะได้เห็นภาพรวมของสิ่งที่เราได้เรียนรู้ไปนะคะในเซสชันช่วงเช้านี้ค่ะดิฉันขออนุญาตสรุปประเด็นสำคัญนะคะจากเซสชันเช้านะคะในเรื่องของภัยการเงินใน3ประเด็นค่ะเรื่องแรกคือภัยการเงินใกล้ตัวทุกคนนะคะและกลโกงของมิจฉาชีพพัฒนาไปเรื่อยๆดังนั้นทุกคนในสังคมต้องร่วมมือกันจัดการภัยการเงินไม่ปล่อยให้ปัญหาภัยการเงินลุกลามในสังคมไทยประเด็นที่2คือการลดข้อจำกัดของข้อมูลตลอดห่วงโซ่การหลอกลวงเป็นสิ่งที่สำคัญค่ะเราควรมีการส่งเสริมการแชร์เชื่อมโยงและการใช้ข้อมูลร่วมกันทางระบบควบคู่ไปกับกลไกที่จะช่วยให้ประชาชนใช้ตัดสินใจการทำธุรกรรมอย่างรอบคอบและประเด็นสุดท้ายที่เราได้เรียนรู้จากเซสชั่นเช้านี้นะคะคือการป้องกันคือสิ่งที่ดีที่สุดค่ะคือทำให้ประชาชนเท่าทันและมีภูมิคุ้มกันจากภัยการเงินโดยต้องทำใน3ระดับไปพร้อมกันทั้งในระดับบุคคลสังคมและระดับระบบค่ะ